What's up guys, Maelstrom here. If you enjoyed then like, subscribe and leave a comment so I can keep on making these awesome. My sensei. Yes, I am taking you on as my apprentice. Jiraiya said triumphantly. Don't you need my consent before you say those kind of things? Naruto asked with a sweat drop. Don't you want to be the apprentice of a Sunin? Jiraiya asked with a raised eyebrow. Yes, it's an awesome opportunity, but your enthusiasm is suspicious. Why do you want to take me as an apprentice? Wouldn't Sasuke team be a better choice as he's the rookie of the year? Naruto asked and Jiraiya let out a chuckle. Would you believe me if I told you that I was the dead last too? He asked and Naruto's jaw dropped. Seriously? He asked and Jiraiya nodded and took a seat on the lush green grass of the clearing. Truth be told, I am only training you because I owe your parents. He said and Naruto turned to him slowly and groaned. You're not going to tell me either, are you? Nope. Fine, I accept. He said plainly and Jiraiya smirked. What have you been doing so far? For the past 2 weeks I improved my mental knowledge, I mastered tree walking and throwing weapons. Taijutsu and elemental manipulation was this week, and then the last week was to try and see if I could learn at least 2 ninjutsu. Naruto explained. What about physically? I run 50 laps a day while my clones train. After the laps I do 300 push UPS, sit UPS, pull UPS, and jumping jacks. He said. Jiraiya had to admit, he was impressed. Test your affinity now. Jiraiya commanded. Naruto shrugged and held up the paper. Using his good chakra control, he channeled some chakra into the paper and it split into 4 pieces of paper. One burst into flames, one crumpled, and the last got damp. The water from the last touched the crumbs of earth, then a plant sprouted. A shock wave was then sent throughout the training ground, knocking both shinobis unconscious. Mindscape, Naruto. Both Naruto and Jiraiya opened their eyes to see themselves in a hallway. The ground was covered in ankle-length water, dim yellow lamps were on the walls with a bunch of pipes running along the walls and the roof. They looked at each other and then back down the dark hallway. Where are we, sensei? No idea. Jiraiya said. Come to me, mortals. A deep voice echoed throughout the halls. Both men froze and looked at each other again. Naruto let out a sigh and began to walk in the direction of the voice. Wait. Where are you going, Kekkei? Jiraiya asked, running up to meet him. Naruto turned to face his sensei and ran a hand through his hair sheepishly. He sighed. I feel like I know this place like the back of mine. He said and turned back around. Come on, Jiraiya sensei, I can sense demonic chakra, this must be the residence of my tenant. Naruto said and nodded for Jiraiya to follow. Jiraiya looked quizzical and followed Naruto. How can you sense chakra in here? He asked. Uzumaki. He stated simply and Jiraiya nodded. Kusina had that same ability, but Jiraiya always thought it was a special ability only she could do. He shrugged and followed Naruto. 5 minutes later they came face to face with a giant door. On the door was the kanji for Kyu. Naruto opened the door and walked in with Jiraiya behind him. Once the door closed behind him with a loud clank and the lock went back into place, black slitted red eyes opened and peered down on the 2 Konoha shinobi. What kind of cruel joke is Kami playing on me? The Kyuubi's voice bellowed, making the humans raise an eyebrow. My host is nothing but a blonde baka. It said, making Naruto glare. Yip. Naruto said, making the other beings in the room watch him strangely. You, the great Kyuubi, is sealed within a 12-year-old genin. Naruto said. Why am I even here? I don't want a weak host, so I was going to tell you about the Uzumaki clan Kekkei Genkai. He said, making both spike-haired shinobi to go bug-eyed. Naruto opened his mouth to speak, but Kyuubi cut him off. Yoso no Ringu. Kyuubi spoke. Elements of the ring. Naruto wondered out loud. Yes, It allows the user to have great control over all of the 5 elements, but also add 2 elements to come up with 1 and add 3 to come up with 1. However, it is quite taxing on the body. You can make 4 sub-elements and 1 super sub-elements. It explained, and Naruto glanced at Jiraiya, who was eyeing the fox suspiciously. "What's wrong, sensei?" Naruto asked, and Jiraiya turned to him. "Kushina never had that ability, or any other Uzumaki I know of," Jiraiya said suspiciously, making the great fox snort in amusement. "And how many Uzumakis did you know?" Kuwabai asked with slight annoyance in his deep demonic voice. Jiraiya's serious expression turned sheepish. About 3. He said, and Naruto's sweat dropped while Kuwabai snickered. "And they were Kushina Uzumaki, Mito Uzumaki, and Sasushi Uzumaki," he replied with a hint of satisfaction in his voice. "Mito was my first Jinchuriki, Kushina was my second, and Sasushi was Kushina's father. You know, some quite powerful and well-known Uzumakis, Mito and Kushina didn't have it because I never allowed them to. I control whether they get it or not. Mito and Kushina were already strong, so I left them be. The kid needs it, and Sasushi had it but never told anyone, fearing people would use his family to get to him," Kuwabai said with a smirk. "Back to business," Naruto said, slightly irritated that he was being ignored by both the Kuwabai and his newly appointed sensei. "About the Kekkei Genkai, explained it some more. I'm confused," he said sheepishly. Kuwabai groaned. "Yoso no Ringu, sub-elements, or Kekkei Genkai, are elements where you combine 2 of the normal elements to come out with 1, pick 2 and I will explain. Wind and lightning. Water and lightning will make Ranton. Storm release." "Yes," it answered simply, then explained some more. "A super sub-elements is when 3 elements are combines. They are also called Kekkei Tota." Naruto nodded his head, then turned back to Jiraiya. "What do you think, sensei? It's a good opportunity to learn some new things, but how can we trust it?" "Can we trust you?" Naruto asked, looking at the fox. Kuwabai only shook his head negatively. "It won't be easy for me to gain your trust, but I can tell you that even as demons Baiju, you'll live up to their word," Kuwabai explained. "Fine by me. I think the fact that he didn't lie is a sign we can trust him," Naruto said, and Jiraiya nodded slightly. "How do we do this?" Jiraiya asked. "When you go back to the real world, just say Yoso no Ringu activate and you will know what to do," Kuwabai explained, began to kick them out of his humble abode. "Don't be a weak Jinchuriki. By the way, you'll have to figure out how to use the Kekkei Genkais and Kekkei Tota on your own." Naruto groaned at the last part and faded from view. Meanwhile, Yamanaka residence, Konohagakure. Inoichi and Inada sat quietly enjoying their afternoon snack. They were eating rice and meats. They would normally have light conversation, but they were waiting on Ino. Then suddenly, a purple blue burst through the door. "He asked me out." Inada smiled, and Inoichi eyed his daughter. Inada knew who it was, while Inoichi thought it was. "You are not going out with that brat," he said sternly, making both females turn to him. "What? Why?" Ino yelled. Inoichi simply reclined in his chair and crossed his arms. "I don't want you near that brat," he said, and Ino let out a sigh and put on the most fearsome jutsu in the elemental nations. "Puppy eye jutsu. But Naruto-kun has been training me for the past week," she pleaded, and Inoichi's mouth opened. "You're talking about Naruto?" "Yes, who did you think I was talking about?" "Sasuke." "Yes," he mumbled under his breath. "Well, it was Naruto who asked me out, and I'm going shopping to buy a dress," she said, and walked upstairs. "Well, wasn't that a little awkward?" Inada said with a chuckle. "A little." Meanwhile, TG2, Konohagakure. Yoso no Ringu activate. A white ceiling circle began to glow on the ground around Naruto, who was standing. Jiraiya was facing him and looking on in great interest. The ceiling array began to spin. 2 minutes later it was moving at least at the speed of sound. It then stopped and changed to a deep red color, then a ghost-like image appeared between the sensei and student duo. "Who are you?" The voice of a woman came. It was firm and stern. It was a voice that had two meanings. The first was what the woman said. And the second was answer or you die. Naruto observed the figure that had appeared. It was a woman, he figured out by the voice, the figure, and the long flowing hair. Her hair was a deep red, her eyes were midnight blue and her face was round. She wore a full-body mesh suit, a red mini-skirt over it. As a shirt she wore a dark purple jacket that was long-sleeved. In her feet were shinobi sandals with heels and it went up to her knees. "En Naruto Uzumaki Senju?" Naruto answered. The woman raised an eyebrow, though it could have barely be seen as she was still in a ghost-like form. Also, by this time Jiraiya was standing next to Naruto. "You are a Senju?" A nod. "How?" Naruto paled as he didn't know how. He was just told that he was and had forgotten to ask the question, but was shocked when Jiraiya went and whispered in her ears. Her eyes widened slightly and she whispered something back to Jiraiya, who nodded his head positively. Jiraiya went back and stood beside Naruto. "Choose your Kekkei Genkai and your Kekkei Tota," she stated, and Naruto shook his head negatively. "Before that I want to know two things," he said, and she grew a tick mark. "Who are you and what elements make what?" "My name is Naruto Uzumaki, co-founder of the Uzumaki clan, and if what that white-haired man says is true about Kushina-chan being your mother, I am also your great-grandaunt." Naruto nodded and gestured for her to continue. "You can combine any element with any elements, that is all I can tell you." "Okay, so the Kyuubi said I can choose 4 Kekkei Genkai and 1 Kekkei Tota, that true?" "Kyuubi. Interesting," she thought, and gave him a curt bid, to which he nodded back. "I already have Mokuton, so how about fire and earth, water and wind, wind and fire, and the last one for Kekkei Genkai will be lightning and water, what would that make?" he said/asked. "The first you called was Yaton, then Hayaton, the third was Shakuton and the last was Ranton. Are these your final choices?" Naila asked, and Naruto turned to Jiraiya, who shrugged. "Lava, ice, scorch, and storm sounds about right." Naruto mused. Naila nodded and ran through 5 unfamiliar hand seals. Naruto's eyes began to glow and then turned the midnight blue like all Uzumaki's. His hair immediately grew until he had 2 red bangs framing his face, and the base of his hair remained yellow as the tips of all the spikes turned black. Jiraiya's eyes grew wide as he looked like a mixed hair-colored yondaime, which was bad. The other villages couldn't know who he was, but then that thought was immediately trumped when his whisker marks faded. "You may want to look in a mirror after you pick the Kekkei Tota," she warned, and Naruto rose an eyebrow and shrugged it off as nothing, and then placed his hand on his chin. "I can mix any 3 elements for the Kekkei Tota, right?" A nod. "Then I choose wind, water, and fire." Naila placed a hand on her chin. "That isn't one, but I can make it for you. Since water and wind makes ice, with the added effect of fire the ice will become dry, so it shall be called Dreijutan, or dry ice release. I shall take my leave." As she said that, a stomach-griping pain shot throughout Naruto's body. Jiraiya was by his side immediately. Naruto was screaming in unconsciousness. He immediately placed a private seal around the clearing and waited a minute until Naruto stopped screaming but remained in a comatose, unconscious as a dead man. Jiraiya sighed and threw him over his shoulder and began walking towards the Hokage Tower. He would have rather used the Shunshin no Jutsu, but he didn't know what his chakra would do to Naruto's unconscious life force. So he did the natural thing. It may have been natural, but not for shinobi. He walked. Later, store, Konohagakure. Ino walked out of Konoha's most expensive store with 4 bags being juggled in her arms. She had spent 2 hours shopping and had finally found the right dress. Shopping aside, she had been thinking about the past week and why she fell for Naruto. She had fallen for him on their 3rd day of training. She smiled at the memory. Flashback, 4 days ago, Konohagakuer. Naruto sat atop the waterfall that was over training ground 2. It was about 15 feet high and had beautiful crystal clear waters. On top of the waterfall was a giant tree to which he rested in. The lush green grass and trees of the hidden leaf slept on the ground below. He was currently waiting for Ino. Since Ino came from a ninja clan and had her parents to help her train, Ino already knew and mastered the tree walking exercise. Ino had given him some pointers and he had also completed it. Now he was waiting for her to arrive so they could start the water walking exercise. On Naruto's lap was a pair of swim trunks. He had also recommended Ino come prepared to get wet. She had told him she would do what was necessary and here he was waiting for her. She was late. This was also a first for Ino. Even though they had only really gotten to know each other in the past 2 days, he had figured out she liked punctuality and had even come late for spite. It was funny to watch her rant on and on about being late, but this time she was the one who was late. He let out a frustrated sigh and jumped down onto the ground. He quickly stripped of his black onesie and quickly glanced around. Seeing no one, he took off his boxers and slipped on his swim trunks. He stretched and walked closer to the river. The water wasn't shallow, so standing in it was an easy task. And applying chakra to his feet to stick to the surface underneath the water. The current wasn't rough, so he knew he would fall to his death off the cliff for 2 reasons. 1. The chakra on his feet would keep him steady and sturdy, and 2. The waters at the bottom was not clear as the top, and the lake was just like the river at the top, shallow. As he eased himself down in clear waters, a shadow immediately blocked out the sun's powerful UV rays. He opened an eye to see Ino and his mouth dropped. She was a 2-piece bikini. It was purple with a yellow floral design on it. It also showed a decent amount of cleavage for a young woman of 14 years. Yes, there are 14, start academy at age and go for 6 years. A small trickle of blood came out of Naruto's nose as he watched Ino tower over his sitting position. Unfortunately for him, she saw the blood and cocked back her fist. Pervert. He saw scent careening over the edge of the cliff and smashed into the green grass of the clearing underneath. 5 minutes later he came back up with a black eye and a bruised lip. Damn. Women could be really strong when they are angry. He saw Ino in the water sitting just like he had been doing and went next to her. Sorry, everyone has a perverted side and I couldn't control it. He apologized profusely and she only got a tick mark and then smirked mischievously. So, you think I'm beautiful? She asked and Naruto froze. There were 2 possible outcomes to this situation and he didn't like either of them as they were a hazard to his health. 1. Say yes and get beaten for apparently staring at her, and 2. Say no and get beaten for thinking she was ugly. So he came up with an alternative. He smirked. Yes and no. Ino was confused. Though she never would admit any of these things, but she was both flattered and disappointed. He said yes, she looked good, and no as in she looked bad, right? What does that mean? Yes as in you are a beautiful young woman, and no as in you can be a man's worst enemy when angry. He said. Ino chucked lightly and shrugged. Thank you. For what? He asked and she turned to him. You're the first person before my dad and mom to tell me I'm beautiful, thank you. She said with a slight tint of pink on her cheeks. You're welcome, you deserve it, now let's get to training. And flashback, Konohagakuer. That was the day. After those exact words left his mouth, she fell in love with him. Now she was excited for her date with him the day after next. She looked up in the sky and grinned. She was finally going out with the boy of her dreams. Hiruzen groaned as he filled out some more paperwork. It was early evening and he was still here battling his mortal enemy. Paperwork. It was so bad sometimes he thought he even hears the paperwork mocking him. As he was continuously signing paperwork, his eyes stumbled on something he found rather interesting. As he read it, he sighed and placed it to the side. Naruto was going to have a horse. Speaking of Naruto, just as he signed the next paper he sensed someone on his windowsill. He knew who it was already. It was two people. One was unconscious and the other had a habit of entering through the window. "Hello Jiraiya-kun, what's wrong with Naruto?" Jiraiya let out a sigh as he placed Naruto to lay on the couch. He went and stood right in front of Hiruzen and began. He filled him in on everything from meeting the Nine Tails to meeting Naila, then unconscious on Naruto's part. "Did you know there was such a thing?" Jiraiya asked with a scratch of his mane-like hair. "Yes, this Naila person you speak of was Mito-sama's older sister. They founded the Uzumaki clan together, then Mito married Hashirama-sensei and had a son who then married and had Tsunade-chan who then had Minato with you and Minato had Naruto with Kushina." Hiruzen explained and Jiraiya took it all in bit by bit. "Who knows about Yoso no Ringu? Now it's you, Itaki and myself." Hiruzen said and Jiraiya nodded, then his face turned grim. "Speaking of Itaki, I found out some information from him. He joined a group known as Akatsuki." Jiraiya said. "Not much is known to him as he has only been a member for a year." He explained, taking a seat on the windowsill. "He only knows their purpose, which is to capture the Jinchurikis and take their Baijuyo. He is currently trying to uncover more information and there are only two things driving him onward despite his illness. Being. The first is that he wants to protect his younger brother Sasuke and to protect Naruto as he owes it to Kushina." Jiraiya said, a small smile gracing his lips. "Can you blame him?" Hiruzen said, a smile also on his lips. "He loves Sasuke as much as to purpose leave him alive during the massacre and Kushina did him in his days as a genin and shinin." He said. "Yes, but that illness is nothing to play with, he only has about 5 to 6 more years." Jiraiya said. "We can't carry him to Tsunade because Danzo has spies watching her every movement to see if she betrays Konoha." Hiruzen said bitterly, then smirked. "Even the great Danzo loses sight of his targets." He chuckled. Jiraiya smiled, then looked back over at Naruto who was sleeping like a baby. "Has the council tried anything?" Jiraiya asked grimly as he turned towards Hiruzen. "Well, the Yamanaka, Akimichi and Nara invited him over for lunch to discuss an allianceship between the clans. It wasn't anything big, but he has however started to train with Inoichi's daughter. That ain't the half of it. Before I met Naruto I was in the shadows watching him spar with the Yamanaka heiress. He asked her out on a date," he said with a lecherous grin. "I have some good news and bad news," Hiruzen said, ignoring Jiraiya's grin. "Yeah. Good news is he's kind of a pervert." Jiraiya began to cry anime tears and Hiruzen silenced him with a clear of his throat. "And the bad?" Jiraiya asked slowly. Hiruzen simply took up the paper from before and handed it to Jiraiya. Jiraiya read. "Hokage-sama. I request a meeting with Naruto Uzumaki Senju and yourself. It is to discuss a marriage contract between my eldest daughter, Hinata Hyuga, and Naruto Uzumaki Senju. Sincerely. Hayashi Hyuga, Hyuga clan head." Jiraiya let out a harsh breath. He gave Hiruzen back the paper and sighed. "This is bad. I think the Gekkei's in love with the Yamanaka, and Hyuga oddly always get what they want," Jiraiya said, and Hiruzen took a puff of his pipe. He turned to Jiraiya and chuckled. "That's not true." Jiraiya looked at him oddly. "How's that? He never got to marry Kushina." Jiraiya snickered, then burst out laughing. "I still can't believe that he wanted to marry Kushina despite being 5 years older than her," Jiraiya said. "He didn't care, he would just say, age is just a number," Hiruzen said, and Jiraiya nodded. "You know he only wants to gain some access to the power the Senju clan holds, right?" Hiruzen nodded. "Yes, but he'll never get it. If Naruto really likes Inoichi's daughter he will stick by her side despite Hinata's status as a princess in Konoha. And Naruto's a prince along with Sasuke." Jiraiya let out a deep sigh as he said that. Then it hit Hiruzen like a ton of bricks. "I am going to schedule the meeting after Naruto's date so he can make his choice. When is it?" "Friday." Good, carry Naruto home and I'll take care of this, and make sure to explain why he was unconscious but leave out the meeting. Hiruzen told Jiraiya. Jiraiya nodded, placed Naruto back over his shoulder and left via the window leaving Hiruzen all by himself. Hiruzen smirked. 2 hours later, Senju compound, Konohagakure. Naruto sat up with a groan. He looked around to see himself in a room. His bedroom. He sat up and walked out after throwing on some pants and a shirt. In the living room Jiraiya sat while scribbling on a notepad. Naruto eyes it suspiciously and went to sit across from Jiraiya who didn't notice him. Naruto scowled at being ignored. Jiraiya-sensei. Jiraiya stopped scribbling and looked up at Naruto. Yeah. What are you writing? Well, while you were unconscious I went to hot springs and did some research for my next Ika book. Jiraiya admitted with a shrug. You're the author of those? Yeah. Jiraiya said. You read them? Well, I have one but I haven't started to read it as yet. Naruto admitted sheepishly. Jiraiya immediately told him he had to read it soon and reminded him of what transpired with Naila and the Kuwabai. He then told Naruto to meet him at training ground 2 the following morning and left. Naruto was about to go into the den to continue his research on his mother and find out who his father was when a maid came in. She informed Naruto that he was requested at the ninja store where Tenten worked. Naruto thanked the woman and told her to inform everyone that they had the rest of the day off. She thanked Naruto in return and left to inform everyone of the news. Naruto smiled as the maid walked off. He had hired them after moving into the Senju compound because of his busy training regime. He never forced them to do anything and they were always kind and pleasant. Unlike Sasuke however, he had no servant for one reason: members of the oh-so-great Uchiha clan needed no help no matter what it was. So they never had. Naruto went upstairs and changed into some casual clothes, locked up his den with some seals he had learned and left to head to the ninja store where he was needed. 2 days later, Yamanaka residence, Konohagakure. Naruto nervously knocked on the door of the Yamanaka residence. Today was the day of his date with Ino and he was nervous as hell. He was sweating like an angel in the pits of hell. He watched as the door slowly opened. On the other side was Inoichi who was smiling at him innocently. For Naruto however, it was actually too innocent. "Good night Inoichi Dano," he said. Inoichi simply kept smiling and gestured for him to enter. Naruto walked in and sat on the sofa where Hinata was located but she was actually smiling normally at him. "Hello Naruto-kun, Ino will be down in a couple of minutes," Hinata said to him and then took in his appearance. He wore a rust orange kimono shirt. It was short-sleeved with black flames licking the bottom of the shirt and the ends of the sleeves. His pants consisted of the same color but wasn't the same. It was a slightly kimono pants that also had black flames trimming the ends of the pant sleeve. On his left arm was a sliver plate with the Uzumaki clan insignia etched in and the same thing with the Senju insignia on his right arm. In his hand was a bouquet of flowers. The flowers were an assortment of akibara, red rose, cane shan, carnation, red, shiroibara, white rose, tsubaki, camellia, red, suisun, daffodil, and pink onobara, pink rose. All in all they meant romance, love, devotion, excellence, respect, and trust respectively. Hinata smiled as she read the real meaning behind the flowers. Naruto sat and waited patiently in awkward silence with Ino's parents. "So tell me Naruto," Inoichi began. "What do you have planned for the evening?" Naruto began to sweat a little as Inoichi's eyes focused on him. "We were going to the Silver Swan then walk around Konoha Central Park and then by sunset I was going to take her on top of the Yondame's head for the rest of the evening and enjoy the peace," he explained. Both adults were shocked at the mention of the restaurant but remained neutral. Inoichi and Hinata nodded then Inoichi got up and walked over to Naruto. He was now leaning in close so his mouth was by Naruto's left ear. "Hurt my little girl and I'll castrate you with a senbon needle," he said before walking off, leaving Naruto to wince and shudder at the thought of getting his family jewels removed by a senbon needle. Don't worry Naruto, I'm going to get Ino, and Inoichi wouldn't do such a thing. Inada said, then left to fetch Ino. Naruto was still clutching his manhood even after both adults left. Soon afterward Ino and her mother came down. Naruto was shocked at what he saw. She wore a purple strapless dress that had a light blue floral pattern. It showed a decent amount of her cleavage from her mid-C cup breast. The dress also hugged her waist, showing off her curves. She wore some strawberry lip gloss on her lips with some mascara and other makeup on her face. The dress stopped at about shin's length, where her feet showed that she wore purple 2-inch heels. On her shoulder was a purple purse. Wow! Naruto breathed out. Inada smirked as Ino blushed a dark shade of crimson. Thank you Naruto-kun, she said. You look good as well. At this point Naruto came out of his trance and Inoichi came out of his den. These are for you, he said, thrusting the flowers into her face. Her eyes widened as she saw the flowers and immediately looked at the hidden message behind the flowers. Say Naruto-kun, do you know the real meaning behind the flowers? No. He lied. He noticed Ino's face fell slightly and inwardly smirked. All right, best you be on your way, Naruto, she is to be home no later than 11. Naruto nodded at Inoichi's words. He offered Ino his hand. She smiled and gave her mother the flowers to put in a vase. As they walked out of the Yamanaka residence to go on their date, they had no idea what troubles the following day would entail. Later, Silver Swan, Kanahagakuer. Reservations for 2 under Uzumaki Senju. They had arrived at the Silver Swan and was currently at the door where the maitre d'hotel or hotel master carried them to their seats. It was a table practically in the middle of the room with 2 chairs, one on either side. Ino, who was still in shock, only had her mouth agape and was breathing fine. Read, barely. Ino-chan, Naruto said, snapping his fingers in her face. She jumped and came back to the world of the living, then stared at Naruto like had 2 heads. No, make that 3. How can you afford a place like this? She hissed lowly, making Naruto chuckle and her raise a brow. Naruto leaned over the table so he was by her ears. Anything for you, he whispered, making her blush a color that would make Hinata look like a dull lamp. He leaned back in his seat and a waitress came up to them. Good evening, I'm Bara, and welcome to Silver Swan. The woman named Bara said. Would you like to hear our special Senju-sama, Yamanaka-sama, or would you like to order normally? No thanks, they said in unison, then chuckled. I would like some tempura, miso soup, and cherry tomatoes, Ino said with a small smile. The woman scribbled it down and turned to Naruto. I would like your largest bowl with miso ramen, asks red bean soup and vegetables, he said, stating the last word bitterly. The woman nodded dumbly and walked off, saying she would be back to take their drinks request. So Naruto-kun, since this is a date, why don't we try to get to know each other better? Well, we do know each other good, but you know what I mean. Sure, why not? He said. Thus began their talk. However, the main topic was Naruto's change in hair and eye color. 2 hours later, Yondaime Hokage head, Kanahagakuer. Naruto sat on the head of the Yondaime with Ino on his lap, leaning back into his chest. Their date had gone exceptionally well if it wasn't for Naruto's overconsumption of ramen. Who knew there was an end to that black hole of a stomach? Naruto let out a contemptuous sigh. He watched as Ino leaned up against his chest from her seat in his lap. He smiled down at her and leaned into her hair and sniffed. Flowers. He smiled her hair and snaked his hands around her waist and placed his chin on her shoulder. She was beautiful. Her pale blue eyes watched over the city of Konoha. You're beautiful, he murmured, making her blush darkly. She turned around him and ran a hand through his 3-colored hair. Red, yellow, and black. Your hair is beautiful, she said, making him face fault. She laughed as he paid on his back with her laying next to him with her head in his chest. She smiled. Naruto's face was happy. He was on a date with a beautiful young woman who he had broken out of her fangirl stage and molded her into a good kunoichi. "Hey Ino-chan." He called to her. Since he was looking into the sky he couldn't see her head nod but he felt it. "Did you test your affinity?" She nodded. "Water." She replied. "What about you?" Naruto let out a deep sigh. "I have all 5 affinities." Her head shot up with wide eyes. "It's an Uzumaki clan trait, it lets Uzumakis have control over all 5 affinities and lets them make elemental Kekkei Genkai." He explained. "Really?" A nod. "That's awesome. However, I have absolutely no idea how to use any of them." Naruto said, then a tear escaped his left eye as the next things he said could well break off his entire relationship with Ino. Naruto relayed the story. From meeting Jiraiya to testing his affinity, then the Kyuubi, the information, Naila, and lastly what happened when he woke up. He then remained quiet to hear Ino's response. "You read that perverted book?" she asked, and Naruto jumped up and turned to her with pure disbelief printed on his face. "That's what you got out of everything I just told you?" he asked. Ino nodded and sat up. She turned and glared at Naruto. Naruto gulped nervously as he waited for her to say or do something. The spit, however, was ever present in his throat and wouldn't go down his windpipe. "If you ever do anything perverted to me, I will personally castrate you with old and rusty kunai," she said. Naruto nodded vigorously, then she paid back down with Naruto doing the same. "Did I just get permission to read a perverted book with some ground rules?" he asked and felt her nod into his chest. "And what do you think about the Kyuubi? If you have a humongous fox with 9 tails in your gut, then you are considered a hero by me," she said. Tears of joy welled in Naruto's eyes as he hugged her tightly. "Thank you, Ino-chan," he whispered. "I was always hated by the village because of Kyuubi. Mind hearing my life story?" he asked, and she gestured for him to go on. Before he started, Naruto glanced at the clock on the Tower of Heaven, the tallest building in the village. The time? 10 o'clock in the night. He smiled and turned back to her to hear her speak. "It's still early, we still have an hour, so why don't you go ahead?" she suggested. Naruto nodded. "The old man told me that he placed me in an orphanage at 2 weeks old because he couldn't watch over me as he had to go back to being Hokage. I stayed in the orphanage happily for 4 months until the word of the Kyuubi reached the ears of the villagers. At 5 months old was when I started to crawl, and they would let me crawl into dangerous places and only stopped me when Umbu or the old man arrived," he said with a tear in his eyes. "At the age of 4 I was kicked out of the orphanage for reaching back late at night, but it wasn't my fault. I was being chased by a mob of Chunin and angry civilians." Tears were now selling in Ino's eyes. "I roamed the streets of Konoha and slept in parks eating garbage for food. At 6 I was severely beaten and would have been dead if it wasn't for Kyuubi. I was also raped." He never got to finish as a pair of warm lips clamped down onto his. His eyes widened as he saw Ino crying with smeared mascara smashing her lips onto his. She opened her eyes and then wrapped her hands around her neck. He slipped his hands on her hips and pulled her onto his lap. After 3 minutes they both parted, gasping for air with slight pants. Ino watched into Naruto's eyes. Midnight blue. They were beautiful and had an almost unseeable twinkle in them. Only Ino could see it. She could see it because she was in love with him. He kissed him again, this time licking his bottom lip, asking for entrance. He happily obliged, and soon they were wrestling for dominance. Naruto won and his tongue was roaming her mouth and he was applying chakra to his tongue to add effect, making her moan into the kiss. Soon afterward they parted again. "That was awesome," he exclaimed with pants. She smiled and leaned on him once again. He smiled as he wrapped an arm around her waist and lay down. "Naruto-kun, please forgive me for how I treated you in the academy." She muttered under her breath in an attempt to keep him from hearing it. But he did. "Don't worry about it," he said, and she turned to him. "You were caught up in your fangirl stage," he said, and she smiled. She kissed his cheek and closed her eyes. "And thank you for accepting me as the Jinchuriki of a Baijuyo that killed some of your family." She remained quiet. "Ino." She was asleep, he figured out once looking into her face. He picked her up bridal style and dashed away to her house. Not a care in the world except for the beautiful young woman in his arms. Later, Yamanaka residence, Kanahagakuer. Inoichi and Inada opened their front door to see an interesting sight. Naruto was holding Ino bridal style as she snuggled into his chest. But the most noticeable thing was the red eyes on Naruto and the smeared mascara on Ino's face. "You made my little princess cry?" Inoichi asked threateningly as he took a step forward, only to be stopped by Inada before he killed the last male Senju alive. "No, I didn't, sir. I told her about the Kiwabai and how my life was before I was told about my Senju title," he said, smiling down at Ino. "She cried for me," he said. Inada and Inoichi smiled at their daughter's decision to stay by Naruto's side no matter what. Inoichi took his daughter from Naruto. He warned if he did anything perverted to her he would castrate him then and there, but Naruto defended himself. Inoichi then walked inside to put Ino in her bed. Naruto then handed Inada a note. "Can you give Ino this for me please when she wakes up?" Naruto asked, and Inada nodded and said good night. Naruto did the same and walked off. He smirked, then jumped away with a shit-eating grin plastered on his face, and that wasn't all. While he was carrying Ino, she had said some interesting things in her sleep, and the result ended in a certain appendage on Naruto to become stiff. Damn. He needed a cold shower. Later, Senju compound, Kanahagakuer. As Naruto walked out of the bathroom with a towel around his waist, he immediately noticed something odd in the design of the master bedroom. He didn't know why he didn't notice before, but then began to think. Then it hit him. He was so stressed into finding out who his father was he never really took in the interior of the master bedroom. There was a strange symbol on the wall above his head. He knew what it was now that he was studying it. A hexagram. He walked over and ran a hand on the seal, and it flowed, and then part of the wall on the other side of the room parted. He quickly slipped on some underwear, some shorts, and a shirt and went over to the parted wall. He slipped in and heard the wall close with a metallic clank behind him. He noticed that the room he was in was very dusty, so building up his chakra he unleashed it, sending all the dust away, and somehow the chakra blast acted as a light switch and the light came on. The room was a 12 by 12 room with a glass case in the center to where 5 books were displayed. Using his sensory abilities he easily saw that the room was booby-trapped. So using his accessional abilities in shadow clones he sent them arrow to the room where it wasn't booby-trapped to see if there was a mechanism. He noticed that underneath the tiles on the ground were kanji for words. He then groaned. The tiles were pressure activating tiles. Except the ones on the outside, of course. He then noticed there were some kanji printed on the glass. It was a riddle he guessed simply by seeing how it was written, and then guessed the books were something of utmost importance. The riddle was as follows. There is a one-story house. Inside it were the following: a pink person, a pink cat, a pink fish, a pink computer, a pink chair, a pink table, a pink telephone, a pink shower. Everything was pink. What color were the stairs? Naruto began to ponder, then looked back at the kanji that was underneath the floor tiles. There were 4 words. Pink, blue, green and none. He then used his clones to think and finally came up with an answer. Using his ninja skills he jumped in the air and landed on the floor tile with the kanji marked none. Come on, it wasn't that hard. The house is 1 story, meaning no stairs. The glass case opened and Naruto went over to it and took out the 5 books. His eyes widened at what they were. They were journals. Journals of very important people. Shodei Hokage, Hashirama Senju. Uchiha clan head, Madara Uchiha. Nidame Hokage, Tobirama Senju. Slug Sunin, Tsunade Senju. Yondame Hokage, Minato Namikaze. Naruto watched the books in awe and horror. He was in possession of the journals of 5 of the most powerful shinobi to ever have passed through Konohagakure. Naruto ran his hand along the seal that opened the door and it closed back. He then watched the books in front of him, all being journals of Konoha's most powerful shinobi in their prime. He was about to go in bed when a knock at his door stopped him in his tracks. He groaned and walked towards the door. He opened the door to see an Umbu with a Nico mask. Yes. He asked and then noticed the Umbu was a woman. She had long purple hair and a slim figure. She wore the standard Umbu outfit and stood at attention. Senju-sama, Hokage-sama requests your presence tomorrow morning at 10. Her voice was soft like a woman's voice should be but stern to show her skill and non-existent fear. Thanks, but isn't it really late? He asked and she nodded her head no. Hokage-sama had eyes on you since you left the Hokage monument with Ino Yamanaka. He said and his face gained a dark hue at the memory of kissing Ino. Okay, dismissed. He said when he felt her get mischievous intent. Being a sensei came in handy. Not only could he sense chakra but emotions as well and there was a whole set coming from him. Naruto closed the door and walked back up to his bedroom. He passed some maids on the way who were drinking tea and chatting but he was sensing sadness from the youngest of the 4 maids. Strina. Naruto called. The maids turned to him and Strina looked at him timidly. She wore a standard maid's dress and was 17 years old. Naruto gestured for her to come and she did. Yes Naruto-sama. She asked once out of hearing range of the other maids. What's wrong? He asked and she shook his head vigorously. Nothing's wrong. She lied and Naruto let out a sigh and walked away telling her to follow him. She said goodbye to the other maids and followed Naruto upstairs. Naruto entered his room leaving Strina to close the door behind her. He sat on his bed and gestured for her to sit on the chair in his room. She did so and waited for him to speak. He left you didn't he? He asked and she burst into tears. Naruto sighed as he had hit the nail on the head. He had sensed the living being in her stomach and knew right away that her boyfriend had left her after finding out. He went over to her and began to rub her back as she began to let it out. From when she told him to what he did after the news was spilt. Apparently he had yelled and chewed her out for not using protection. Naruto-sama, I've been considering abortion. She said only to have Naruto clamp his hands down on her shoulder and tears began to form in his eyes as he wondered what would Ino do if they were in this situation. Strina. He said softly. An abortion is 1 breath never taken, 2 eyes never seen and 1 dream never accomplished. I am not forcing you to keep the baby. If you want you can take an abortion but if you choose to keep the baby I will put you on maternity leave and have one of my top maids look after you while you're pregnant. He explained and she cried into his chest. Thank you Naruto-sama. She said. No problem, so why don't you go tell the maids about it and the orders I have given to help you, you are their top priority and I want to carry you to old man Hiruzen in the morning. Naruto told her. She nodded happily and left the room. Naruto went and lay on his bed. He was about to go to sleep when he heard a rather annoying voice. Hey kid, so I see you're going to adopt her into the Senju clan. The Kyuubi spoke in his mind making Naruto growl at the voice. He simply shook his head yes and awaited for Kyuubi to continue. Tomorrow I start your training with the Sunin. Kyuubi's last words rang out in Naruto's head as Kyuubi's voice left him. Naruto was about to call out when he felt something or someone calling him. He looked around to see that one of the books he had found were glowing. He took it up and saw the name, Hashirama Senju. He opened and read. Hashirama Senju. This journal is about all of the elemental Kekkei Genkai and elemental Kekkei Toda I have come across or heard of in my time as a shinobi/clan head/cage. Kekkei Genkai. Mokuton, The Mokuton or wood release is the ability to create wood at just a thought and use it to fight and slash or help in any way possible. The Mokuton is a Kekkei Genkai passed down through the Senju clan and is only accessible by male members of the clan. The user's body is also transformable into wood itself. The Mokuton also gives the user the special ability to subdue or calm down tailed beast. The elements for Mokuton are Suton. Yatun. The Yatun or lava release comes in one out of three forms. The first form being dry magma. This type of Yatun allows the user to use the magma as a glue-like substance. The second form is molten rocks. The rock are extremely hot and can melt through almost any surface, and the last is lava itself. The lava is known to be the hottest substance on the earth and can be dangerous when in close proximity. The elements for Yatun are Katon and Doton. Futon. Futon or vapor/boil release is the ability to make any liquid in the user's presence become hot. The hot liquids have the ability to heat any surface and can boil up to 2000 degrees Celsius. The user's body can also be temporarily turned into a liquid form. The elements for Futon are Katon and Suton. Hyatun. The Hyatun of ice release gives the user the ability to control/form ice. It is known to be common among members of the Yuki clan located in the land of snow. The user can also freeze water, even water from the Futon. The elements for Hyatun are Futon and Suton. Shakuton. The Shakuton or scorch release lets the user control scorched rock. Scorched rock is very hot and lets the user become invulnerable to any fire-based ninjutsu. The user also controls the temp's tire when scorch release is active. The elements for Shakuton are Katon and Futon. Onatun. The Onatun or ablaze release allows the user to be immune to all lightning-based ninjutsu and weak fire-based ninjutsu. The user has good control over fire when Onatun is active. It also increased the user's speed temporarily in exchange for strength. The elements for Onatun are Katon and Riton. Jinten. Swift. The Jinten or swift release gives the user an extreme speed boost in exchange for making them very weak physically. If the legendary Black Lightning is added to the Jinten, it becomes super fast. When using Jinten, the user breaks down their body's molecular particles and reforms them. The elements for Jinten, swift, are Futon and Riton. Jitan. The Jitan or magnet release gives the user the ability to control magnetism. When in use, the user has an unbreakable magnetic field around him, and once it enters, they are able to control metals. The elements for Jitan are Futon and Doton. Bakuton. The Bakuton or explosive release is able to cause explosions anywhere the user desires. Though it is quite taxing on chakra reserves, it is very helpful as the opponent knows not where you will make explode. The elements for Bakuton are Riton and Doton. Ranton. The Ranton or storm release is the ability to control clouds by sending water and lightning chakra into them, causing dark clouds which are used to send lightning and water down on the field. The elements for Ranton are Riton and Suton. Kekkei Tota. Jinten. Dust. The Jinten or dust release is able to control the particles in the air. One Jinten jutsu can do like the swift release and break down your molecular level. The elements for Jinten are Katon, Futon and Doton. Shoton. The Shoton or crystal release users have the ability to make crystals. It is also used for sealing things within it. The elements for Shoton are Futon, Riton and Doton. As he continued to read, he couldn't help but feel intrigued by the book and continued to read. He soon found himself indulged in a book on nothing but Kekkei Genkai and Kekkei Tota. However, he only read out the parts and notes about elemental bloodlines, and now it was time to read on dojutsus. Naruto, however, fell asleep as soon as he finished the elemental part of the book, but it wasn't an ordinary sleep. He was unconscious. He was in his mindscape. Mindscape, Naruto. Naruto opened his eyes to see himself in a forest. Well, actually he was in a clearing that was surrounded by a forest. And you are? As he heard that, he jumped 6 feet in the air and spun around to meet a face he never thought he would get to see in person. Hashirama Senju. El Lord first. Were the only words to come out of his mouth in his shock state. And you are? Hashirama simply asked again. En Naruto Uzumaki Senju. Naruto introduced himself. Who are your parents? Hashirama asked with a raised brow. Kusina Uzumaki, Nidame Jinchuriki of the Kuwabai no Yoko, and my father is unknown to me. Old man third wouldn't tell me, he told me to figure it out on my own. Naruto explained. Hashirama raised an eyebrow. Seemed like Hiruzen was still in power. Kusina, you say? That was my sister-in-law's granddaughter's name. Hashirama mused on. Naila? He asked, and Hashirama looked at him strangely. If I am here, that means you cracked the first riddle. I suppose mine was the first one you picked up in the secret room. A nod. Well, the other books went back as they were not real, only the first is real, so to get the others you have to crack more riddles and take the books one at a time, and each time he riddle gets harder. Hashirama explained with a grin. Wait. If this is the Shoday Hokage's personal notes on bloodlines, why wasn't the riddle hard? Only someone of the writer's blood can actually access the room and / or read it. Hashirama explained. Then two wooden chairs sprouted from the ground. Hashirama sat in one and gestured for the younger of the two Senjus to sit on the other, and when Naruto did so, Hashirama took out a book out of his pocket. This book has all of the wood release techniques I developed and learned over the years. I am entrusting it to you. I believe you will be a great shinobi one day. Having Mokuton and being a Jinchuriki is a very good combination. When times come to control the Kuwabai, it will help. Hashirama said, and then began to fade away. Thank you, Hashirama-sama. Naruto said before the man known as the Shoday Kami no Shinobi was gone. Naruto soon felt himself being pulled away and decided he would have a talk with Kuwabai tomorrow, and he was gone. Following day, Senju compound, Kanahagakuer. The sound of knocking on his bedroom door awoke Naruto from his slumber. He groaned and sat up as he looked at the time. 9 o'clock. He answered the knock with a come in. Strina. Morning, Naruto-sama, you told me that you wanted to take me to the Hokage this morning, but you didn't say a time. She explained to him, and he held up one finger. I have to be there in 1 hour for a meeting, so you'll come with me. He told her. She nodded and left. Naruto, not able to go back to sleep, rose from his bed and went into the shower. When he came back out to get ready, a cloud of smoke interrupted his thoughts. He turned to where the smoke started and saw Naila there standing with a giant scroll. Naila. Hello, Naruto-san, I have come here for a reason, so please pay attention. At this, Naruto's head shot to her and all attention was paid. Uzumakis have the special ability to turn their bodies into serpents. We can do this because it is a special ability of us having the Serpent Clan summoning scroll. She explained. How come I didn't read that in the history books about the Uzumaki clan? He asked. We never let that information out into the open. The only person outside of being an Uzumaki who knew this information was the first, second, third, and fourth Hokages. How did the fourth know this? She grinned. You'll figure it out soon enough. Anyway, being the last known Uzumaki, I have come for you to sign it, but this different from other summoning scrolls. When you do it, a serpent tattoo will come on your hand. Was her explanation. This is awesome, being able to summon and turn into a serpent. He mused on and on, only to be stopped by a forced cough from Naila, who glared at him. She held out the scroll and explained to him how to sign it. Once his blood was on the scroll, it glowed, and then the blood went onto his right hand and formed a serpent from his wrist to his shoulder. The blood faded away and the serpent became green and blue. You are now able to summon serpents in water and turn into one, but turning into one has stages. This book has everything you need to know about the serpents and their jutsus and styles. She explained, handing him a green book. He took it and she was gone in another cloud of smoke. With a shrug, Naruto placed the book on the bed and went to get his new ninja gear out of his closet. He had only been using the onesie until the ninja store was finished with this, and he was finally going to wear it, but he needed to make a few adjustments. Naruto made the adjustments and donned his clothes. He wore a full-body mesh suit with the right sleeve missing. Over that he wore the rust orange ninja shirt with a turtleneck with the left sleeve long with black flames trimming the bottom and the right sleeve non-existent, so his tattoo was in plain sight. His pants were the standard long ninja pants with black flames also licking the bottom of the pant sleeve and the flames reached his shin. He had a white bandages wrapped around his right thigh and had a kunao and shuriken holder filled with weapons. On his black belt was 2 pouches. One had his Ika book and the book about the serpents. He put on his black ninja sandals and strapped his black headband to his forehead. Naruto smirked at his appearance and was about to go downstairs when Ino walked into her room with the note he had told Inada to give her. "Hey Ino-chan," he said as he walked closer to her. She blushed and walked up to him and kissed him on the lips. "Hello, your maids told me you had a meeting with Sandame-sama, so I just thought I would pass by before I went to training," she said, then gave him the note. "Isn't this the note I have Inada-san to give you?" he asked, and she nodded and hugged him. "I'd love to be your girlfriend," she said. Naruto smiled and kissed her forehead. "Thank you," he said. "I would love to spend time with you, but after training with Jiraiya-sensei," he said. She nodded at this and then she noticed the serpent tattoo. "What's this?" she asked, running her hand along it. Naruto sighed and explained the meeting with Naila and she nodded. She kissed his cheeks and bade him goodbye, but as she was walking out she added a little swig to her hips teasingly. Naruto groaned, which made her laugh. She blew him a kiss and left, leaving Naruto to finish get ready. He then smirked. He would get Ino back. Later, Hokage's office, Konohagakure. "Come in." Naruto entered the Hokage's office to see something he would consider interesting. Hiruzen was smoking his pipe, which was natural, but he didn't expect to see the Hyuga clan's 10 council elders, the head of the clan and his 2 daughters. Naruto just stood by the door and then looked at Hiruzen, who was looking right back at him. He shrugged it off and went to sit on the other side of the room away from everybody. "This better be important or I'm never going to tell the old man the secret to paperwork, plus Strin is waiting outside for me to finish," Naruto thought with a slight chuckle, causing everyone in the room to look at him. "Something you'd like to share, Naruto?" Hiruzen asked, and Hinata, Hayashi's older daughter's head shot up with wide eyes and a dark blush on her face. "I was just thinking about if I was called here for something unimportant I wouldn't tell the old man the secret to paperwork," Naruto said, and Hiruzen's eyes widened. He turned to the Hyugas. "Hayashi, this better be goddamned important," Hiruzen warned, and Hayashi remained impassive. Hayashi then noticed his daughter was blushing in Naruto's presence and smirked. This would make things easier. "Naruto Dano, I am sure you remember Hinata from the academy, and Tai is my youngest daughter Hanabi," Hayashi introduced, and the Hyuga council moved to the side. "Hey Hinata, Hanabi," Naruto said plainly. "Hello Naruto-sama," Hanabi said as she stood and bowed. "Please just call me Naruto," Naruto said, and she nodded. Hello NN Naruto-kun," Hinata said as she too stood and bowed deeply, almost falling over. "Just call me Naruto," he said. "All right, I want to get on with this as I have much more important things to discuss with Naruto," Hiruzen explained and gestured for Hayashi to begin. "Naruto Dano," Hayashi began. "I wish to discuss the future of our clans by proposing a marriage contract between Hinata and yourself." Hinata and Hanabi had wide eyes while Naruto seemed to be choking on air. "Sorry, but I can't do that," Naruto said after regaining his composure. Hinata had tears welling in her eyes and Hanabi started to glare at Naruto while Hayashi and the council were seething with rage. "Why is that? I assure you Hinata is a very beautiful young woman and will make you happy and will satisfy your needs," Hayashi said, and Naruto's face turned into one of disgust. He stood and walked right in front of Hayashi. "Are you implying that I would just use Hinata as a sex slave?" Naruto asked lowly. "She will be your wife. Last time I checked it was a wife's job to please her husband," Hayashi said with his usual stoic face. Naruto let out a sigh and rubbed his temples. Your request has been denied, I have a girlfriend and am really happy with my life as it is. Naruto explained and Hinata began to cry. All of the members of the room saw this. "Ne-chan, what's wrong?" Hanabi asked. Truth was she knew what was wrong. She was seething in rage at Naruto for denying the request. Hinata simply got up and ran out the door and a woman walked in with a perplexed look on her face. The fuck was that about? Naruto inwardly asked himself. He watched as the rest of the Hyagas angrily bid him and Hiruzen farewell and left. Naruto turned to Hiruzen who looked just as perplexed as Naruto and shrugged. He decided to keep his mouth quiet. Just as Hiruzen was about to continue, a figure burst through the door. He was short, about 9 years old, and had a long scarf with wooden shuriken in his hand. "I've got you, no old man," he exclaimed and ran at Hiruzen only to trip on his scarf, making everyone's sweat drop. He got up and looked around. He then pointed an accusing finger at Naruto. "It was you who tripped me," he exclaimed, and Naruto groaned and picked the boy up by the front of his shirt and glared at him. "Don't get on my nerves, boy," Naruto said, and a figure appeared in the doorway. "Senju-sama, please put down the honorable grandson," a man known as Ebisu said, and Naruto looked at the boy in his hand. "That's right, I'm Konohamaru Sarutobi, grandson of the Sandaime Hokage," he exclaimed only to get a clout to the back of his head. "I don't care who you are, if we were to play by nobility I would have you outnumbered, being related to all 4 Kages except Old Man Third," Naruto said with a tick mark. Naruto placed Konohamaru down on the ground and Konohamaru went on and on about people only seeing him as the grandson of the third and not as himself. "How about this, kid? I'll teach you a jutsu that can make you beat the old man in a flash," Naruto exclaimed. "You will not teach him that jutsu or you'll he stuck doing D ranks for the rest of your life as a genin," Hiruzen said, and Naruto paled. Naruto dismissed Konohamaru but not before whispering something to him that only Strina saw. "Alright old man, what's so important?" "Jiraiya regrets to inform you that you can't be his apprentice," Hiruzen stated. "What? Why?" "He has a spy network to run, so you will be placed on a team, but he will train you when possible. He will actually be training you for the next 2 weeks and then you will be placed on a team and he will train you when he has time." Naruto groaned and then introduced Strina and told Hiruzen about her problem. Soon afterwards Strina was Naruto's newly adopted older sister. Naruto had dismissed Strina home and was chatting lightly with an anxious Hiruzen. For what he was anxious for Naruto didn't know, and he then decided to ask. "Hey old man, what's wrong, you look anxious?" Naruto asked on worry. "What's the secret to paperwork?" Naruto let out a chuckle as he stood up and walked to the door. He placed his hands on the handle and opened the door. Right before he exited he said 2 words Hiruzen heard clearly. "Shadow clones." It hit Hiruzen like a ton of bricks and Naruto was gone. Outside of the door Naruto began to count with a chuckle and a smirk apparent on his face as he waited. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, now I'm free. That's the end of the first part, guys. If you enjoyed, then like and subscribe for part 2. This is Maelstrom signing off.